In our previous module, we documented the definitive procedures the patient underwent after leaving the emergency department. We will now focus on the reason for those procedures, the injuries themselves. Welcome to Module 2, Lesson 6, which is dedicated to Section 6, Injury Pattern. The subtitle for this module is Translating Clinical Findings into Standardized Data, which precisely describes your task in this section. Upon completion of this module, you will be able to first, identify the correct source documents for injury data, which are primarily radiology and operative reports. Second, define the principles of data quality as they apply to transcribing narrative findings and selecting coded injury descriptions. Third, you will be able to accurately enter all data within Section 6, including the narrative summaries and a detailed coded list of injuries. Fourth, you will learn to correlate the process of injury coding to the calculation of key outcome predictors, such as the injury severity score. And finally, you will be able to justify the need for meticulous accuracy in injury coding for national research and risk-adjusted benchmarking. Welcome to the training module for Section 6, Injury Pattern. This is the most detailed and technical section of the MTR form. Our goal here is to convert complex clinical information from medical reports into a structured, coded format. This process of standardization is what allows us to scientifically measure and compare the severity of injuries on a national level. This lesson is divided into two main parts. First, we will cover entering the narrative summaries from reports, and second, we will focus on building the coded injury list. This section is designed to quantify exactly how injured the patient is. The data you enter here is used to calculate internationally recognized scores that are vital for three key reasons. First, for benchmarking care. The Injury Severity Score, or ISS, is the global standard for measuring trauma severity. It allows us to compare our patient outcomes with other hospitals and countries to ensure we are providing the best possible care. An ISS greater than 15 is the official definition of major trauma. Second, for standardizing research. The Abbreviated Injury Scale, or AIS coding, provides a universal language for describing injuries. This ensures that a, quote, liver laceration is coded in the exact same way in every hospital, which makes our national research accurate and reliable. And third, for predicting outcomes. The scores calculated here, like the probability of survival, or PEES, are used in our clinical audits. They help us identify cases where patients did better or worse than expected, which is a fundamental part of the quality improvement, quote, audit loop. Now let's walk through each field in Section 6. Let us begin with the first part of this section, the narrative results. For fields 1, 2, and 3, your task is to accurately transcribe the summary findings from the official radiology, operation, and postmortem reports into these text boxes. You are not required to interpret the findings, only to transfer the text accurately. Your source documents will be the Radiology Information System, RIS, for CT and X-ray reports, the Operating Room Information System, ORIS, for operative notes, and the Pathology Department for postmortem reports. The pearl, or best practice here, is that the most efficient and accurate method is to copy and paste directly from the electronic medical record. To be concise, you should focus on the impression or conclusion section of the radiology reports and the findings section of the operative notes. The most common pitfall to avoid is typing out the summary by hand, which significantly increases the risk of spelling mistakes or data entry errors. Another common mistake is pasting the entire multi-page reports. Please remember, only the final summary is needed. Now we move to the core of this section, the coded injury list. For field number 4, the injury pattern list. Your instruction is that for every distinct injury mentioned in the reports, you will add an entry to this list. Select the appropriate body region, such as thorax. Next, from the injury description drop-down menu, you will select the most specific description that matches the report. Then click Add New Injury Pattern. The source for this will be the narrative reports you just transcribed in the previous step. The pearl for this task is to work systematically. Read through the CT report summary from top to bottom, adding each documented injury one by one. For example, first, the skull fracture. Second, the rib fractures. Third, the spleen laceration. This methodical approach ensures no injuries are missed. The most critical pitfall to avoid is choosing a vague, non-specific description. For example, do not choose injuries to the thorax NFS, which stands for not further specified. If the report clearly states multiple rib fractures, right side, you must always select the most detailed and accurate description available in the list. Now let's look at AIS coding. The Abbreviated Injury Scale, or AIS, assigns a severity score from 1 minor to 6 maximal or untreatable. When you select an injury description, the system will automatically generate the corresponding AIS code. Always do a quick check. Severe injuries should have high scores, like 4, 5, or 6. Pitfall: never ignore the AIS code. This code is the engine that powers all injury severity calculations. If it's missing or incorrect, your final scores, like ISS, NISS, and PS, will be completely wrong. Finally, let's look at the scores that are generated from your work. For the fields of AIS coding, ISS, NISS, and PS, your instruction is simple. You are not required to enter any data in these fields. They are locked and are automatically calculated by the system. The AIS code is assigned based on your injury description selection, and this code is then used by the system to calculate the total ISS, total NISS, and the probability of survival PS. The source is the system calculation itself. The pearl here is to use the total ISS as a final quality check. As we've discussed, an ISS score greater than 15 defines a major trauma patient. If you know the patient was critically ill but the ISS is low, for example, a score of 9, it is a strong indicator that a severe injury may have been missed during your coding process. You should go back and review your injury list. The pitfall to avoid is attempting to manually change these scores. They are calculated by a specific, validated formula to ensure standardization across all entries in the registry. The scores can only be corrected by correcting the underlying injury descriptions and their associated AIS codes. Let us now summarize the key takeaways from this module. First, Section 6 is a critical process measure that quantifies injury severity, which directly impacts our outcome analysis. Second, your primary source documents are radiology, operative, and postmortem reports. Third, you must copy and paste the narrative summaries to ensure accuracy, and then be systematic and specific when building the coded injury list. And finally, remember that the abbreviated injury scale, or AIS code, which is assigned based on your description, is the most critical element, as it drives all the final, auto-calculated severity scores. This concludes the training for Section 6, Injury Pattern. You now understand how to translate complex clinical findings into the standardized, coded data that forms the analytical core of the MTR. The accuracy of your work in this section directly determines the validity of our hospital severity scores and our ability to perform meaningful, risk-adjusted comparisons. Your meticulous attention to detail here is fundamental to the integrity of our national research and quality improvement efforts. In our next module, we will document the final chapter of the patient's hospital journey in Section 7, Outcome. Thank you.